There is a kind of closeness that feels less like warmth and more like a door quietly closing. Someone gets near enough to actually see you, and instead of relief, something in you takes a step back. Not because you don't care. Often it's the opposite. It's that the caring itself is what sets off the alarm. Psychology calls this pattern avoidant attachment. And if you've spent your life assuming you were just independent, just private, just someone who needs a lot of space, this might be the first time anyone has named the thing you've actually been doing. Today we're going to walk through the signs of it, not as a diagnosis, not as something wrong with you, but as an honest look at what it actually feels like to live inside a nervous system that learned, a long time ago, that closeness was something to manage rather than something to trust. The first sign is that closeness and pressure feel like the same thing. When someone starts wanting more of you, more time, more access, more of the parts you don't usually show, most people feel flattered. You feel a weight. Somewhere in your body, a quiet countdown starts, and you might not even be able to say what it's counting down to. You just know that the warmth that was so easy last week suddenly comes with a faint sense of obligation this week. Attachment researchers call this deactivation, the nervous system's habit of turning down the volume on intimacy the moment it rises past a certain point. Here's the part that matters. It isn't a decision you make. There's no moment where you sit down and choose to withdraw. By the time you've noticed you've gone a little cold, a little formal, a little harder to reach, the mechanism has already run. And that's the theme underneath everything we're about to talk about. None of this is chosen. All of it is automatic, which is exactly why it's so hard to see in yourself. The second sign is that you're most comfortable in a relationship at exactly the distance where it can't fully reach you. A little unavailable, a little hard to pin down. And here's what's strange about it. You're not cold at this distance. You can be warm, generous, genuinely loving, even the most attentive person in the room, as long as there's an exit somewhere in it. The intimacy is real. It just runs on the quiet condition that you could leave if you needed to. Then the exit closes. It becomes serious, defined, expected. Someone uses a word like always or forever, or asks a question about next year. And something shifts that you can feel before you can explain. The person who was so easy to be around a month ago now needs a reason, and you find yourself reaching for one, and you can't quite locate it, because the truth is, there is no reason. There's just the closing door and the old instinct to be on the other side of it. The third sign runs backwards from what you'd expect, and it's one of the clearest tells there is. You handle distance far better than you handle closeness. Think about that for a second, because most people are wired the opposite way. A breakup, a long silence, someone walking away. It hurts, but you know what to do with it. You know how to be alone. You're genuinely good at it. There's almost a relief in it, a return to a baseline where nothing is being asked of you. What actually undoes you is the other direction. Being wanted, being needed, being asked to stay fully present when every nerve in your body is quietly reaching for the door. Most people move through the world afraid of being abandoned. For you, the deeper fear is the one nobody ever warns you about, and the one you rarely have words for. It's the fear of being absorbed, of disappearing into someone else's needs, of being so close to a person that you can no longer feel where you end. The fourth sign is the one that hides in plain sight because it doesn't look like a wound at all. It looks like your greatest strength, your independence. And in most of your life, it genuinely is a strength. You're capable. You handle your own problems. You don't fall apart. You don't cling. You don't make your struggles other people's emergencies. People admire this about you, and they're not wrong to. But underneath it runs a rule you never consciously agreed to. A rule that got written so early you mistake it for your personality. The rule is simple. Don't rely on anyone. Because relying on people is how you end up let down. And here's the quiet cost of it. That rule protected you once, when it needed to. It's the same rule that now stands between you and the closeness you actually, genuinely want. The armor that kept you safe is the armor that keeps you alone. And it's wearing the disguise of your best quality, which is exactly why it's so hard to take off. Now here's the part that matters most, because none of this started with you. Avoidant attachment isn't a personality you were born with. It's a solution you built. And you built it early, before you had language for any of it. The research going all the way back to Mary Ainsworth and the early attachment theorists found that this pattern tends to form in childhoods where closeness quietly stopped being reliable. And this is worth slowing down on, because most people picture something dramatic here, and it usually wasn't. It's rarely the obvious kind of neglect. More often, it's a home where your needs were met physically, but not emotionally, where you were fed, clothed, kept safe, and genuinely cared for in every way that could be seen. But the person caring for you didn't quite have room for your inner world, where you brought a feeling to someone and it was met with discomfort or distance, or a subtle message, never said out loud, that your emotions were a little too much, a little inconvenient, something to be managed rather than welcomed. So you did the most intelligent thing a child in that situation can do. You adapted. You learned that reaching out was a bet that didn't reliably pay off. And a child who learns that doesn't stop needing because no child can stop needing. They just stop showing it. They take the need and they fold it inward, and they become self-sufficient astonishingly early. And everyone around them exhales. Because a child who asks for nothing is the easiest child in the world to have. That's the part that still aches if you look straight at it. The independence everyone praised you for was never the goal. It was the adaptation. It was a small person deciding, correctly, that the safest thing to do with their needs was to hide them, even from themselves, especially from themselves. The fifth sign shows up in the moments right after connection, and it's one almost nobody connects back to the pattern. You have a real conversation, a genuinely close night. Something opens between you and another person, the exact thing you supposedly want. And instead of wanting more of it, you feel an almost immediate pull to retreat, to be alone, to reset. People sometimes call this a vulnerability hangover, but for the avoidant nervous system, it's more specific than a bad mood the next morning. Intimacy spends something in you. It draws down a reserve that other people seem to refill just by being close. And so the instinct afterward isn't to build on the closeness, the way a securely attached person would. The instinct is to recover from it, to get back to the version of yourself that isn't so exposed. And the person you were close to the night before feels the temperature drop and has no idea what they did, because they didn't do anything. The closeness itself was the thing that triggered the withdrawal. The sixth sign is subtle, and it might be the most important one to catch, because it disguises itself as good judgment. You notice flaws in people at precisely the moment things could get serious. The small incompatibility you hadn't clocked before. The thing they said that didn't quite sit right. The creeping sense that maybe this isn't it. Maybe you're settling. Maybe there's something better or truer out there. And here's what's genuinely worth sitting with, because sometimes it really is discernment, and I'm not going to tell you to ignore your instincts. But avoidant attachment has a very particular habit, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. It manufactures reasons to leave right at the threshold of real closeness. Not before, not after, right at the edge, the moment the relationship asks you to actually stay. The distance was going to happen regardless. The mind just strongly prefers to have a reason for it, because a reason feels like a choice, and a choice feels better than an old wound quietly running the show. The seventh sign is one you might have never named. You struggle to ask for help, even when you desperately need it, and even when help is standing right in front of you, offered freely. Not because you're proud, exactly. It's more physical than pride. Asking for something activates the same old alarm. It puts you in the position of needing, and needing is the exact state your whole system was built to avoid. So you carry things alone that you were never meant to carry alone. You solve in private what other people would simply talk through with someone who loves them. And from the outside, it can look like strength, or like you don't trust anyone. But underneath, it's simpler and sadder than that. Somewhere early, needing someone stopped feeling safe, and your body never got the update that the danger has passed. Which brings us to the eighth sign, the one underneath all the others. The loneliness this pattern creates is a strange kind, because it doesn't come from being alone. You're good at alone. It comes from being close to people and still feeling unreachable. From sitting across from someone who is genuinely trying to find you and staying just slightly out of view. Not because you want to hide, but because letting yourself be fully found feels like handing someone a key you were taught, a long time ago, never to give away. It's the loneliness of being loved at a distance you set yourself, and then quietly wondering why no one ever seems to reach the middle of you. They're not failing to. You're standing just past where they can reach, in the exact spot that once kept you safe. So here's what actually changes things. And it isn't forcing yourself to suddenly need people overnight. That never works. And honestly, being told to just open up is its own kind of pressure your system will deactivate against. What changes things is smaller and quieter than that. It's recognizing that the pulling away was never a character flaw. It was intelligence. A young version of you looked around their environment, correctly assessed that closeness wasn't reliably safe, and built an entire system to survive it. And that system worked. It did exactly what it was designed to do. The only problem, the whole problem, is that it's still running now, in relationships that aren't the ones it was built for, protecting you from people who were never going to hurt you the way the first ones did. You don't undo an attachment style by hating it, or by fighting yourself every time the door starts to close. You loosen it by understanding what it's for, by noticing the countdown instead of obeying it, by staying present a few seconds longer than the instinct wants, and discovering that nothing bad happens, and then a few seconds longer than that. It's not a switch. It's a slow renegotiation with a part of you that's been doing its job faithfully for a very long time, and just needs to learn, gently, that the job is mostly over. None of these signs make you cold. They make you someone who learned, very early and very well, how to protect a part of themselves that genuinely needed protecting at the time. That isn't damage, it's history. And history, unlike wiring, can be understood. And the moment you understand it, it stops running you quietly from underneath, and starts becoming something you can actually choose to set down. Tell me in the comments which one felt closest to home. And if this names something you've carried for a long time without ever having a word for it, the next video was made for exactly the kind of person who just watched this one. See you there.